Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 2022 Summer Writers Institute and to this afternoon's presentation on writing about place. This workshop is part of our series of free public programs on the craft of writing. My name is Amanda, and I am the coordinator for academic programs here at University College. Throughout the coming weeks, I'll be your point of contact if you have any questions about programs or courses. Before I introduce our program, I'd like to address a couple of housekeeping items. If you have questions for our presenter, Eileen G'Sell, please enter them into the Q&A field on your screen. I'll facilitate at the end of the event and will address items in the order we receive them. If you have any technical difficulties, please let us know via the chat feature and someone will assist you. As with every Summer Writers Institute, this year we are excited to introduce a series of engaging speakers who are talented and accomplished writers. Upcoming is a workshop about zine making, a panel discussion on getting published in literary magazines, and a craft talk on adding sensory detail to your writing. Visit the Institute website for full descriptions and for registration information. And now I am thrilled to introduce today's presenter, Eileen G'Sell. Eileen is a local St. Louisan who received her MA in English and Film Studies at the University of Rochester and an MFA in poetry right here at Washington University in St. Louis.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sorry, Amanda, about the technical difficulty. She was just giving my bio and anyone can look that up who's interested. It's not that important. Welcome to the Summer Writers Institute workshop. I was hoping that today would be, I don't know, one of the somewhat mild summer days in St. Louis, where maybe it's like 90 degrees, 88 degrees, but sunny. I will say that the fact that it is rainy today is a relief to me in terms of my yard and how sun scorched it's been and how sun scorched I've been. But it does mean that probably most of you are not on location. I was imagining this virtual workshop to be one where many students are, for example, in Forest Park or in a local park or museum or diner or cafe, some place of local interest or relevance to you. It doesn't have to be scenic or picturesque, but some place that means something to you in St. Louis. If you are not located, and I suspect probably most of you are not located in such a place because of the rain, I would suggest that you maybe open a different window, a different tab, and do a Google image search or even a YouTube search for images or videos of this place, so that you can have access to some of the more sensory details of this place if you're not there right now. As you can tell, I am not an especially important St. Louis place. I am in my humble office, although this is a 1914 World's Fair home. So the yellow brick here has been here for a very, very long time. So in that way, I guess it is very St. Louis. Today's workshop is based on something that has always fascinated me. And this is something that has fascinated me, not just in terms of poetry, but in terms of all sensory description that evokes thought and emotion. And that is how abstract language and sensory or concrete language interact, and how different writers deploy concrete language versus abstract language differently. And today we're going to think about that as regards describing place, specifically describing St. Louis. So I have a document, a Word doc, that I'm going to go ahead and upload to the chat for everyone to download, so that I don't have to share my screen excessively, as sometimes that can be distracting, I think. So this, I tried to get it up earlier, but it unfortunately only uploaded to the, here we go. Actually, make sure this is, okay. So it's called Hot Town Live Lines. And I'm gonna go ahead and upload it now, so everyone can download it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well, so that everyone else can access this. But hopefully I will give you a moment to download the Word doc. It's a bit long because it also has excerpts that I wanted to discuss with everyone here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go over some of the some of what is at stake in today's session. Okay, so, all right. Okay, so hot town live lines, tension and surprise in language describing our city. So I decided not to share St. Louis-based poems or St. Louis-based prose today, because I didn't want any of you to think that today's session is about describing a vision of St. Louis or a historic version of St. Louis that feels well-trodden or popular. I wanted this, whatever you write today is specific to you. It doesn't have to actually be about something someone else wrote about. So for that reason, I brought in 3 pieces that are from different decades in American history by 3 very different poets. And actually the third author is not a poet, but is a novelist, but writes in a deeply poetic way, such that I wanted to include her as well. So for those of you who are interested in writing in lines and writing verse, which is essentially just writing in lines, you can do that today. For those of you who feel more comfortable writing in prose, that's also totally fine. You do not have to write in verse. So the 3 that I have right now are Nantucket by William Carlos Williams from 1923, You Very Young in New York by Hannah Sullivan from 2018, and then an excerpt of prose from Jesmyn Ward's novel Sing Unburied Sing from 2017, and this is a description of rural Mississippi. So what I wanted to do before I have volunteers out there read each of these excerpts, I wanted to just go over what is the distinction between abstract language and concrete language. I think that sometimes the term abstraction is tossed around in such a variety of ways that it can be easy to get confused about what abstraction even means in language. I don't see abstraction as good or bad, nor do I see concreteness as necessarily good or bad. So today's lesson is not about glorifying or condemning a particular type of language, so much as thinking about how abstract and concrete language work in tandem with each other all the time, and especially in description, and how these two work together in a way that gives us a sense of place. So the way I like to define abstract language has to do with words that relate to the realm of the mind or heart. So words like democratic, that's an idea. That's something we think about. It involves our conceptual apparatus. Beautiful, that's also a concept. It's subjective. Comfort, very much so a concept. Fair, sadness, these are words that have to do with emotion or ideas. And then concrete language on the flip side, words that sensorially convey some aspect of the tangible world, the world of the 5 senses. So words like scratchy, satin, cold, smooth, sugary, taut, tall, lampshade, and maroon. So you can notice some of these words are visual, like maroon. Some of them are tactile, like scratchy or satin or cold. Some of these words are olfactory or gustatory, like sugary, for example. So these 2 different kinds of language really affect the way we read and the impression we get of any piece written about a place. So I'm noticing there's a few people in the chat having, okay, it looks like this is resolved. Okay, I just wanted to make sure everyone was having access to the downloadable file. So what I'd love to do is get a volunteer to read Nantucket, which is a very short poem of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 couplets by William Carlos Williams. And Nantucket, I've never been there, but it is an island off Massachusetts, I believe close to Cape Cod. Maybe some of you have been there. A volunteer to read Nantucket. And I actually can't choose volunteers. I believe that John, who is moderating this webinar, it will enable you to volunteer and become a panelist and then read the poem. Thank you, Maureen.
Okay, Maureen, I've allowed you to, there you go.
Okay. Nantucket. Flowers through the window, lavender and yellow, changed by white curtains, smell of cleanliness, sunshine of late afternoon, on the glass tray, a glass pitcher, the tumbler turned down by which a key is lying, and the immaculate white bed.
Thank you, Maureen. So I want to say just a few words about each of these. And please know that I am not exhausting the possibilities here in terms of unpacking what these poems or these prose excerpts are doing with concrete and abstract language. But in this poem, one of the reasons I chose this poem is because it is incredibly reliant on concrete language. In fact, the only language in this poem that really doesn't feel concrete to me would have to be immaculate. Immaculate is not a tangible sensory word, but has to do with an idea of something being pure, untainted, pristine, maybe even holy in some way. So one of the things I notice about this poem and what it's trying to do, it's describing what sounds like a really beautiful hotel room. And for me, at least, this very concrete description, which is very slow and very condensed, there's not a lot of frill here when we go from couplet to couplet. It culminates in this key and then an immaculate white bed. The word immaculate, because it's different from the rest of the poem, because it is abstract, draws attention to itself. And so for me, there's something about this bed that becomes honestly fairly illicit. This scene is not illicit. This scene is not hypererotic, but immaculate at the very end seems very charged because it's like, wait a second, what's going on here? Why is so much attention being drawn to this hotel bed? And so for me, this poem always kind of evokes a lot of curiosity. Nantucket is not an explicitly naughty poem from 1923, make no mistake, but I do think that word immaculate becomes more charged by virtue of the fact that we haven't gotten a lot of abstract language before. So this next poem is from 2018, much more contemporary, by a younger poet. Younger in the poetry world usually means like under 50. So I'm 42, and I guess I hope I would still kind of be a younger poet. But a younger poet named Hannah Sullivan. If I could get a volunteer to read this poem, You Very Young in New York. And the lines are long, so whoever reads this, thank you so much. Hopefully you have great lung capacity. Jan Foster, thank you so much. You have your hand raised.
All summer, the park smelled of clothes and it was dying. Now it is Labor Day and you have been sleeping through a rainstorm, half aware of the sewage and frying peanut oil and the ozone, rising in the morning heat and the sound of your roommate hooking the chain, flipping ice cubes into a brandy balloon, pouring juice over them, ruby Sernunello, till they giggle, popping their skins. The freezer throbs. He has been beating a man he met on Craigslist. He has been dreaming. Old New York, a James novel, a Greenwich Village Christmas. A certain kind of frost in the meatpacking district and the smell of the carcasses. Dull with the tang of freezing blood beside the skip of the Hudson wind. You have been thinking of the building opposite at night, the lights, going off one by one, a diminished Mondrian, one ochre square. When a woman undresses for the city, stroking her puffy thighs, you hear him talking on the phone about you, his petite innocent. All summer you've been eating peaches from the green market. Overripe in September, they need to rest in the icebox, sitting with their bruises. All summer you have been dreaming of fall and its brittle confection of branches.
Thank you so much, Jan. This is a hard poem to read out loud because each line is quite long. With this poem, one of the things that really strikes me is how we have so much olfactory imagery, from the smell of cloves to the smell of and taste of brandy, to ruby sanguinello refers to blood oranges. There's a lot. We have the meat packing district, the smell of carcasses, the smell of peanut oil and sewage. New York here becomes extremely olfactory, and some of the smells seem pleasant. Most of them do not. The parts of the poem that are not so concrete, the very beginning, we get dying, which in a way invites us to think about New York as being a place in decline, as being moribund. But then at the same time, we get repeated twice the word dreaming, which suggests a kind of youth and a kind of hope that speaks to the title, You Very Young in New York. So here I imagine the author, Hannah Sullivan, looking at herself when she was younger in New York and how despite the potential decrepitude or bad smells around her, she was dreaming. And certain things here had a kind of life or liveliness despite the fact that there was so much decay at the same time. This third excerpt I wanted to look at is not lineated, it is not verse, but it is an excerpt from a really wonderful novel that I've been reading this summer called Sing, Unburied Sing by Jesmyn Ward. And this is describing rural Mississippi. It's describing in a contemporary context, like in the last 15 years. And this is the novel that was written and published in 2017. So you don't really need to know anything about the plot of this book to understand and appreciate this excerpt, which is one of the reasons why I chose it. And again, even though it is prose and this is from a novel, I deeply feel that in many ways, this is very poetic because of how lyrical the description is. So if anyone would volunteer to read this excerpt, that would be wonderful. Oh, Michael Julius, thank you.
When we pull off the highway and onto a back road, the sky is dark blue, turning its back to us, pulling a black sheet over its shoulder. The world shrinks to the headlights coming from the car, twin horns leading through the darkness, the car an old animal, limping to another clearing in the woods. When we finally pull into a yard and the trees open up, this place is different. It's not like the huddle of houses in Forest County. There's only one house here, and it is wide. There are windows all along the front, and warm yellow lights shine through all of them. I see up close the paint is peeling in thin strips with marker-thin lines of brown-gray showing through. The windows look a little cloudy, like the water my fish died in. The wisteria planted on each side of the front steps has rooted thick into the earth, grown as big around as a man's muscly arm, and had twisted and twined up the railings to weave thick as a curtain along the front of the porch.
Thank you so much, Michael Julius. Great job. So with this excerpt, we have a lot of poetic language that is also very concrete. We get the description that I think is so evocative of the sky being a dark blue, turning its back to us, pulling a black sheet over its shoulder. So here the sky is personified, and I love the image of a black sheet being pulled over its shoulder as though it's turning away from those who are looking at it. So we also get personification of the sky. The world, in some ways here, the world is abstract. You know, this is the narrator's world. It's not actually the world, though. It's not actually the planet Earth. Shrinks to the headlights coming from the car, twin horns. So really evocative, imaginative way, a very poetic way of describing the headlights to describe the car itself as an old animal limping to another clearing in the woods. So much of this is deeply sensory based. And one of the things I've really admired about Jesmyn Ward is her incredible capacity to write with concrete details about places in a way that acknowledges how difficult they may be in certain ways or how challenging they may be. I mean, this house in some ways seems very warm and inviting with the yellow lights, but also seems like it may be a bit neglected or in disrepair. The windows look a little cloudy, like the water my fish died in. This is an image that feels sad in a lot of ways, but the author, the narrator, they don't tell us that this is sad or that this is a reason to despair. But at the same time, there's a sense of incredible strength here and beauty. The wisteria planted on each side of the front steps has rooted thick into the earth, grown as big around as a man's muscly arm, and has twisted and twined up the railings to weave thick as a curtain along the front of the porch. So for me, I also get the sense of beauty and strength, even as this house seems to be somewhat in disrepair. So I share these with you as very different examples of very different writers across very different time periods writing about place. So what I'd like to do now is start thinking about St. Louis. So if you don't have a specific part of St. Louis chosen, that's okay. You might do a Google image search and find specific images or videos on YouTube of specific places. If you're in a location that you've chosen, that's wonderful as well. I'd like you to think about this place in St. Louis that has some cultural or historic significance. As I mentioned before, it does not need to be an institution of great fame. It could be a bakery, it could be a statue. Once you have chosen your spot, I'd like you to create 2 lists as quickly as possible. One, a list of abstract emotions you feel in response to this place. So for example, love, fear, anger, indignation, woe, humility. These are all abstract emotions. And the other I'd like you to create is a list of concrete descriptions. So I have some examples: metallic, sweat, crimson, clanging, etc. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I'm going to maybe up to 6 minutes for this. And you don't have to use this actual document, but it could be helpful to do so. So I'd like you to actually compile a list of abstract emotions and then compile a list of concrete descriptors. And they don't necessarily have to be emotions. They could also be ideas. Like justice, for example, is an idea, or beauty is an idea. So create these lists and then we'll come back together. I'm going to stop sharing this. Okay, so I decided to write about my backyard, which I've often stared out at this big tree in my backyard, and I live just north of Forest Park Parkway, so I can see all the cars, and then I can see the really beautiful houses on Lindell, the kind of meet me in St. Louis houses that are immediately south of Forest Park Parkway. So for abstract emotions, I wrote peace, calm, pensive, urban, dreary, bleak, somber, and old. These are just some of the things that came to mind. For concrete descriptors, I wrote green, wet, whooshing, raindrops, patter, dangling, plops, and branches. And what I'd like to do next is to invite all of you to look at your 2 lists of abstract versus concrete words and combine them. You can combine them as inventively as possible. So I gave some examples like angry tree or orange delight. If you want to adjust some of the words so that an adjective becomes a noun or a noun becomes an adjective or something like that, or a modifier becomes a verb, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to give you a little bit more time. Maybe I'll give you about 2 minutes to do this. And then what I'd really love to see, and over the next 5 minutes, is you can go ahead and copy and paste them into the chat. I know that the chat is usually used for technical difficulties for webinar, but I would really love to see what kinds of inventive descriptions you come up with. So maybe what you could say is, before you copy and paste your description in, you can say where in St. Louis you are describing, since of course this is a very diverse city with a lot of different types of places to describe. So for example, I would put something like, backyard in Skinker to Bolivar, with my description. So it's 1:32 now. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to go ahead and mix and match some of the abstract terms with some of the sensory terms, some of the concrete terms from the list. And then as you'd like, go ahead and feel to copy and paste to the chat for the next 3 or 4 minutes. I'd love to see what we compile. Thank you to all of you who are posting to the chat. I'm going to give you another 2 or 3 minutes. You don't have to copy and paste yours to the chat. I just love getting examples. And remember, one of the goals here is to mix something that is abstract with something that is concrete. So for example, I think I said calm, patter. Calm is abstract, patter has to do with the sound. So that would be abstract with concrete, or concrete and abstract. Just thinking about how you can inventively mix these. Ooh, Forgotten Breeze. This is a good one from Jessica. And we'll go over some of these. And it doesn't have to be about the city. Just to be sure, it does not have to be about the city. It could be any place. Lauren, who I know, hi Lauren, is writing about St. Charles, which is absolutely fine. Okay, maybe I'll give you another minute and then I'm going to go over these. Okay, I'm going to start reading through some of these that really stand out to me as inventive combinations. And so inventive combinations in terms of things that go together that are abstract and concrete. So and apologies in advance if I mispronounce any of your names. Usually I ask everyone to share their name and do that. Unfortunately, I can't do that in this webinar setting. But from Final Goldberg, we have sun, sweet giddiness. So the sun is certainly concrete. Giddiness and giddiness is more abstract. Sweet giddiness would also be a combination. We have, let's see, gnarled tree trunks looming. Looming has a lot of abstract feeling to it. We get red, green, and pink, which is very concrete. Lush, which is more concrete, and lovely. The lovely there is more abstract. Let's see. Showing off in photographs. The photographs in Maureen's is concrete. Showing off, or sorry, photographs is concrete. Showing off would be more abstract. Childhood is more abstract. Swim tags is more concrete. Hypnotic splashes. Oh, that's interesting. I really like that combination. Let's see. Lingering camaraderie. That would definitely be something more. Camaraderie would be more abstract. Lingering, I could imagine being abstract or concrete, depending on the context. Sturdy orange glow. Oh, that's a cool description from Anna. Orange glow is very visual. Sturdy is more abstract. What does it mean to be resilient? What does it mean to be sturdy? From Mika Brown, we have blue longing. That's really interesting. Blue would be concrete, of course, visual. Longing is emotional. Soft breeze. Soft is concrete. Breeze is not. Or actually, no, sorry. Both of these are all concrete. Excuse me. Breeze is concrete and soft is concrete. Soothing is more abstract, though. Soothing is more abstract. Forgotten breeze. Breeze more concrete. Forgotten more abstract. Oh, I really like Lauren's stoic colonies of tawny rabbits. Tawny rabbits, very concrete. Stoic, not concrete. Much more abstract, emotional. Quiet confidence is more is a combination. Quiet being concrete, confidence being abstract. This is from Raji. Let's see, graceful shadows to describe the Hokia Mounds, very cool. Melodic mounds, also a really wonderful alliteration there. Let's see, we have beckoning refresh of wet. That's an exciting description of Tower Grove from Andrea. Urban crunch is a great combination of more abstract and concrete. Suburban crunch is also a good combination. Nuts and twigs, gravel and glass. Let's see. Yvette is telling me she can only see my text in the chat. Oh, maybe no, I don't know if everyone can see what's in the chat or not. I can see everything in the chat, which is wonderful. Hopefully you all have access to the chat as well. Oh, I am sorry that you cannot see the rest of what's in the chat. I had no idea. Apologies for that. This is my first time doing a webinar, and so there is a learning curve. I can't see what's in the chat. I can see everything that's in the chat. I had no idea that you could not. So maybe, John, maybe there's a way that you could give them access to the chat so they can see each other's posts. That would be really wonderful. There's some really wonderful descriptions here, so thank you for sharing. Cooling hum, that's an interesting combination of two different concrete qualities. This is from Corinne. Lavish raindrops, also a really wonderful combination from Corinne. Let's see, sad surfaces, sad hard surfaces from Janet, describing the St. Louis Art Museum. Someone's describing crown candy. Bacon and chocolate elicit warm childhood memories. So bacon and chocolate, very concrete, warm childhood memories. Childhood memories would be more abstract, and warm here suggests comforting and a more abstract valuation. So what I want to do next, thank you for posting this. I'm sorry that not everyone has access to everyone else's. But what I'm going to go ahead and do, it looks like John is copying and pasting what everyone else has posted in. Thank you, John.
No worries. So going forward, everyone should be able to now have the option to chat with everyone.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, I didn't, yeah,
now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So what I'd like to do next is share, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. to do the longer prompt. So this is one where you have a choice to write a St. Louis-based story or poem. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and give you the options. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so start a poem or story about this place in which the abstract emotion is the title and the concrete description is your focus. So the caveat here is that you cannot include any abstract emotions in the piece. So you cannot tell us in the piece if things are sad, happy, comfortable, warm, exciting, etc. So part of the challenge here is to convey the emotional stakes through concrete description. The second option, start a story or poem about any place in St. Louis that you find utterly beautiful, but you cannot use any words that relate to beauty. So pretty, gorgeous, attractive, lovely, etc. Avoid these words and rely on concrete words instead to convey a sense of aesthetic rapture or beauty. The third option, start a story or poem about a favorite smell or taste in St. Louis, but do not use any words directly related to smell or taste. This is especially hard. This is testing your ability to convey something in one sensory realm, but using another sensory realm or variety of other sensory realms. So this is kind of a synesthetic experiment for number 3. And then number 4 is, what is the strangest place in St. Louis that you can think of? Pretend you are seeing it for the first time and describe it without telling your reader your emotional response. What do you see, hear, smell, taste, etc.? Convey the strangeness of this place to the world in words. So you can play around with these prompts. If you want to describe, for example, a place you find very ugly, or a smell or taste you really dislike, that is also fine. It doesn't have to be your favorite or a place of tremendous beauty. But I'd like you to choose one of the 4 options, and then I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to write either in lines or in prose, in paragraphs and sentences, something that you create with these prompts, thinking about and being mindful about how much abstract language you have in the piece versus sensory and concrete description, and how the two are working together.
There was a request for you to leave your screen up so they can
Yes,
see the
I
prompt.
just saw it. I'm gonna go ahead and share it again. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. And what I'd like to do is invite any of you who are interested in sharing something of what you wrote or talking about the challenges of this exercise, depending on which prompt you chose, to go ahead and raise your hand. If you'd like to copy and paste some of it into the chat, you're also welcome to do that. You can copy and paste a small section of it. You can copy and paste something larger. Probably an excerpt would be preferable just for the sake of the chat. But I see 3 attendees have raised their hands, and that's great. So I will wait for John to activate your panelist status so that you can share. So John, if you could shift the attendees to panelists so that they can share with us, the rest of the group.
Hi, Eileen. I actually do see one. I don't know if you can at this point.
Oh, I can. I
Okay.
lack the ability to make someone who's not a panelist a panelist. So I see 3 people with their hands raised, but I can't actually. I don't, or maybe I can.
I can see them, and I think I am also a panelist. I'm not sure if it's a screen view thing.
I've moved 4 people up into the panelists that had their hands wrote up. One of them has unmute. Those of you who've moved up to that, please.
Oh, fantastic. Hi, Julie.
Hi.
Hi. Go ahead.
Okay, mine's pretty short, so if that's okay if I read it, and I attempted number 3. So
oh, wonderful. The one about the smell or taste?
Yes, and I found that difficult, but I attempted it.
Yay.
I have the bright red cherry poised delicately atop a heap of whipped cream as thick, dark chocolate slowly eases down the sweating metal cup.
Ooh, I love that. Very sensory. So is this let me guess, is this Ted Drew's?
Well, I was writing about Crown Candy, but it could
Crown
be
Candy,
other
that's right.
one.
No, actually Crown, it sounds more like Crown Candy than Ted Drew's because it's like ice cream sundae, right?
Yes, and they use the
Okay.
metal cups.
Oh, that's
Mhm,
right. That's
mhm.
an important detail. I love that. Did you describe it as sweating?
Yes.
I love that. I love that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it makes it feel like it's alive. And it also it reminds me of how outside Crown Candy on a really hot summer day, everyone else is sweating. So that's really cool. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you.
Let's see, we also have Pritha. I can see you, Pritha, and apologies. Pritha, am I saying your name correctly?
It's Pritha, but that's cool.
Pritha. Thank you, Pritha.
Hey, sorry, I'm wearing a facial mask, so that's why I look this way.
You look fine to me.
Okay. Thank you. I wrote something. Do I tell you what I wrote about, or do I just read it?
You can read it, or you could tell us a little bit about the challenges. Sometimes students want to share what was hard or exciting about a particular prompt. We can also just read the excerpt.
Okay, I'm gonna read the excerpt and then maybe just take a sentence to talk about it.
Okay.
Tatu Ghora in Bengali means a small, sturdy horse, one that works hard, travels great distances, grateful to be useful, even as not a bukiraj. In Arabic, more elegant, a stallion, prized, fast, and lean. A 2004 Toyota RAV4 beside a new model Lexus in the visitor parking lot at Del Mar and de Belviere might not parse similar loss if stolen, but to me, we are the same, temporarily housed in a foreign city's stables, trying to be.
I love that. Pritha, please say more.
Okay, so my parents named their cars. I borrowed one of them, this 2004 RAV. They call it Tatu Ghora. I drove here from Massachusetts to attend the summer writing workshop, and it's parked in the visitor parking lot of the building that I'm like living in as a subtenant, but there's no lock on the gate. So every day people check in with me on the elevator. Did you get flat tires? Is your car still there? It's kind of terrible. I feel similarly as a person that's traveled here for this writing workshop, danger, like, am I going to be safe, etc. So that's all.
Well, I just wanted to say, I mean, one of the things I really admire about this piece is how it moves so rapidly from the description of the small sturdy horse to the Toyota. That shift was really exciting for me. I didn't expect it. And then at the end, when you say temporarily housed in a foreign city stables trying to be, I really loved how you brought them together. I thought that there was some really fantastic also description where you combine abstraction with concreteness. For example, prized, fast, and lean. Prized would be more abstract, whereas fast is more concrete and lean is much more concrete. So even going from lean to the RAV4, it invites me to think about how the Toyota is maybe also lean. Like it kind of imparts sensory capacity to the car as well. I have, let's see, a couple other people, I have three more. So for the purposes of finishing on time, I'm going to move to Lauren, who is a wonderful student in my Dangerous Women class. And I have not met Lauren in person, so this is especially delightful for me. Lauren, go ahead.
All right, so I'll just say I did the first prompt, which the hardest part of that was the title, honestly. So yeah, this is Luminescence in a Beloved Place. And there is only one bench, and an old man already sits there, panting, with sweat beading on his forehead. Putting our heads down, we keep going. The lake ripples, a fish jumps once. In the shade, we have respite, Colonies of rabbits watch as we cycle past, unwilling to break eye contact. Like all the other surfaces, they also glitter.
Wonderful. I really loved the description of the eye contact not broken between the bunnies or the rabbits. Like there was something, okay, so what I really love about this that's weird is that a lot of times rabbits or bunnies are described as adorable or cute, but the unbroken eye contact actually sounds like maybe they're a little hostile or focused, or that they have a kind of agency. So I think it changes the emotional tenor of the piece. But I loved how you didn't use any words that described like ominous bunnies. You know, the unbroken eye contact though, I mean, it freaks me out a little bit.
So I've had rabbits, and we also have rabbits that live behind our house, and we also have them at our greenway. And one thing that people I guess don't really get about them is that they're very communicative with the way that they look at people and each other. And so eye contact is actually a really big thing. And if you can get them to make and keep eye contact, they're actually communicating with you.
Wow,
So
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you so much for sharing that, Lauren.
Thank you.
And then I have Finale Goldberg.
Finale, like the grand finale. If it's okay, I think I'd prefer to keep my camera off.
That's absolutely fine. Absolutely.
Fidget. So I titled my poem Art Hill, and I was doing the second prompt. Green grass rolls away like a wave, giddy herb-scented descent. The cerulean sky arcs overhead like a bird lifting off, honey-kissed.
I love the giddy descent part, because those are not two juxtapositions. That's not a juxtaposition I encounter very often. Can you read that one more time? It's really beautiful.
Sure. Green grass rolls away like a wave, giddy herb-scented descent. The cerulean sky arcs overhead like a bird lifting off, honey-kissed.
The last description of honey-kissed is also surprising, because I don't think of the cerulean sky as necessarily like something that one could taste, but honey-kissed makes me think that maybe there's like something going on with the sun. It has to, it's something that makes me think of light, or kind of warm.
That's what I was going for. Like there's sometimes when you can almost like taste the sunlight because it's so thick and rich. And
it also makes me think that it's not an especially hot day, because when the sun comes out for a little bit and you feel like its presence in a really like honey-kissed way, it usually describes it to me, it means it's not relentless. You know, I have not felt honey-kissed by the sun for many weeks in St. Louis, because it's just been like, so its presence is so strong.
Maybe more late summer, early fall.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Finale. And then we have Mika Brown.
Yes, hi.
Hi, Mika.
I attempted the first prompt, which was to not use abstract language, right?
Mm-hmm. That's okay. Right. It's hard to do.
So I named mine Pride, and it goes like this. In a small area of North St. Louis sits a historic neighborhood, a community once filled with Black families, teachers, and doctors. My mom grew up there with 8 siblings in a shotgun house with a basement. My dad lived around the corner in a 2-story house with a basement. He had 12 siblings. One of the first Black teaching hospitals was built there, Homer G. Phillips, where I was born in 1977. The neighborhood was where the Eddie Malone's Children's Home was located, and Sumner High School, the first Black secondary school west of the Mississippi. Does it demonstrate pride?
Honestly, I think it does. And here's why. So I've actually jotted down in the chat some things that felt like they were important concrete descriptions, Mika. So shotgun house with a basement, 2-story house with a basement, Homer G. Phillips, Sumner High School, west of the Mississippi. one of the things that you're doing with your description is you're honoring like specific places that have historic relevance and that have geographical relevance. I also thought the description of the houses, shotgun house with a basement, two-story house with a basement, that level of specificity made me think of what would give a community pride. So I thought that those moments worked really wonderfully to show how a community can have pride based on these like historic markers, but also based on having homes that they own that are specific and that we can imagine. So I hope that helps. I really, especially the description of the houses, I was really getting into that, Mika. And I think that to me, they do describe pride or convey pride.
Okay.
So I hope that's helpful. I hope you
It
keep
is.
working on it. I
Thank
hope
you.
all of you keep working on it. Preeta has told us that previously comments are disappearing. Could we access them? I think I have access to most of these, or it looks like the earlier ones. Let's see. I think I have access to all of the comments so far. So if I do, Preeta, I'm happy also to see if I can download them somehow and send them to others. I'm not sure which ones are disappearing. It looks like, okay, so maybe I'll check that out. So I've seen some other posts from Jessica Pierce with an excerpt here. I really love the shift from trees sing, water trickles, we sit quiet, do you taste the honey? It's a really wonderful shift from sounds to taste. John Hinterleiter has posted a post about a stocky building downtown. I love the description of the orange ladders twisting and bending. So you don't have to post yours to the chat, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity to see each other's posts if you wanted to. Riverfront Anticipation from Jan Kraus, dark with only little sparkling light, reflections on the water from the bridge traffic above. Oh, that's a beautiful description, because usually I think of bridge traffic as kind of onerous and awful. Dank with smells of river water, teasing my nose from the damp bricks of the wharf. This has a really interesting description here because it's both positive and negative in terms of what we might consider like sensory experience. Jan Foster, the beautifully messy dripping peach. Beautifully messy is a really wonderful juxtaposition because it is unexpected. Messy is usually considered negative, and it's more, I think it is more concrete, but beautiful is more abstract. Brutal sunshine is also exciting here. I don't have time to read all of these out loud. And if you are posting to the chat, keep in mind that you have to post them to everyone, otherwise only certain people can see them. So I think that might be the issue here. And I probably should have clarified this before. This is my first time doing a webinar. So when I'm teaching a Zoom class, when someone posts in the chat, everyone can usually see it and it's not an issue. But it looks like John is reposting ones that have been posted that are not as accessible. Summer sunshine, Sears flesh, I lick my arm and remember my childhood home. This one's really exciting because I lick my arm and childhood home. In some ways, like I find it jarring, but it makes me want to keep thinking about what about licking a sunburned arm reminds one of childhood. And I could see that because I know when I was a kid, I got sunburned quite a bit growing up in St. Louis. Let's see. And then Amanda says, if we can find a way to get a transfer of the chat, Amanda will make it available. Thank you, Amanda. And you can email Amanda to let you know that you'd like a copy, which is wonderful. So thank you so much to everyone who has posted something. And I'm going to go ahead and shift over to the Q&A. I think Amanda has some questions for me, but please let Amanda know what questions you have. I think that's probably the best way to do it. Unless Amanda, if you recommend they put them in the chat, they can do that as well. But it sounds like it might be something that it's better for them to contact you directly. Is that the case?
Actually, if they enter them into the Q&A field on their screen, it's next to the chat button.
Oh, okay, that's better.
And
right.
I will read them as they pop up. And in
Perfect.
the meantime,
Actually, that's a much better way. It's a great way also of distinguishing between our creative work that's in the chat and the Q&A section. So thank you for emphasizing that, Amanda. I forgot.
Of course, no worries. Let's see, and I have, just to get everyone started, since we don't have any questions yet, I wanted to know, do you use these exercises to get yourself started in your own writing, or do you use them more when you're getting started with like first-time writing students or things like that?
I do use these. I don't necessarily use them like in the sequence or use them in a formal way. But when I am writing, I don't usually go into writing a poem, for example, thinking that I know exactly what the poem is going to be about. I usually like to be surprised in the process of writing, so that I don't necessarily know where something is going to go. So one of the things I like to do, so for example, let me think of a good example. So the winter of 2021, I was teaching completely on Zoom because of the ongoing pandemic. And since we were all virtual anyway, my partner and my dog and I all relocated to Los Angeles for a winter to be there to support my partner's father. At the time, this is the first time I'd ever spent a winter in Los Angeles. So I did write a lot of place poems. And one of the things I would often do is think about, okay, what are some of the cliched ways of describing Los Angeles? What are some of the expected conventional ways to describe Los Angeles? I want to try to describe Los Angeles in ways that are different, that speak to a much more distinctive, authentic experience of being here during the winter of 2021. So a lot of times what I would do is try to convey emotion through concrete words that people might not expect, or concrete description that people might not expect. And I think that something that students are already starting to get in the chat, which is something that's important to me, is that there could be something tremendously rewarding for the reader to read about something that may seem, I don't know, of one emotional tenor, but is actually conveyed in a different emotional tenor because of the concrete language described. So I think that, for example, someone described like car traffic on a bridge is creating these beautiful lights on the river below. To me, moments like that are one of the things that are most magical about poetry, and indeed about more lyrical description, because often we think about traffic and the kind of rush hour grind in very negative sense, or very negative emotional terms, but that student made it something beautiful and something visual and something that even interacted with nature. So this is a perhaps belabored, rambling way of saying, I don't necessarily follow these prompts like discreetly, like in sequence, but whenever I'm writing poetry, I often try to describe things in a way that I feel is unexpected. And one of the best ways to do that is to bring together abstract terms with concrete terms in surprising combinations. And I also do this as a film writer, insofar as I'm often tasked with describing things visually. And I see a description of visual experiences, whether or not it's film or visual art, because I also write about visual art quite a bit. I love the challenge of describing the visual experience in a different way. And so I'm often thinking about how to marry or couple or bring together something that's abstract with something that's concrete, in a way that's surprising for the reader and maybe gives a stronger sense of what a piece of art is like emotionally, or what a film is like emotionally. So hopefully that is helpful. Looks like we have some other questions.
Yeah, Mika would like to know, do you teach or coach / mentor emerging writers? If so, where can we find information on classes you teach?
Oh, thank you, Mika. So I teach at WashU in many different capacities. So I teach in the college writing program for Washington University, which is not primarily a creative writing course, although I think that argumentative writing and composition can be very creative. As far as other types of emerging writers, right now I'm not teaching anything at WashU focused on emerging writers or emerging creative writers. Every summer, though, I usually teach one literature class for University College. So right now I'm teaching Dangerous Women, which is not a creative writing course, although we're reading a lot of creative writing. Frankly, Mika, I would love to teach more creative writing at WashU. I would love to teach creative writing more for University College. In the past, I have taught critical writing, or culture writing, like writing about movies or writing about food or travel. I have taught that for Summer Writers Institute in the past, and it was super fun. Last summer, I taught a creative writing class based on St. Louis. That was also really fun. So next summer, hopefully I'll teach a creative writing class for emerging writers as part of the Summer Writers Institute. And I would love to see any of you there and get to know you better. Hopefully, let's see. And then Jan has a question. Are there authors you would recommend that are particularly masterful at mixing concrete and abstract language in surprising ways? It would be great to look at more examples to enhance our own work. Jan, this is a brilliant question. I have many authors I would recommend, but I'm just going to give you some that I can think of, and I'll also write it in the chat. So I was mentioning Jesmyn Ward, her Sing Unburied Sing. This is a book that I'm about 2/3 of the way through. Some of you have probably read her before because she is very feted in the world of letters. This one won the National Book Award. So Jesmyn Ward is one contemporary writer, but I'm also going to give some older writers. Let's see, Jesmyn Ward. Rachel Kushner is another novelist who I think the way she describes is really brilliant. Let's see. Oh, Barrett Swanson is a nonfiction writer who sometimes writes for Harper's. And in his nonfiction pieces, the way that he describes place, the way he describes people, the way he describes just everyday lived experience is extremely evocative. And the way that he merges abstract and concrete language is fantastic. Sometimes when I'm going to write or describe something myself, I'll read some of Barrett Swanson's work first. He also has, frankly, kind of a ridiculous vocabulary, and I love learning new words. So I am always bound to learn new words reading a Barrett Swanson essay. So he's an essayist and nonfiction writer. Historically, I mean, there are poets like Barbara Guest, a New York School poet from the mid-century who I really like. Let's see. Gosh, I can think of so many. Carson McCullers, who's a really wonderful fiction writer. Yeah, if I come up with more, I'll write them in the chat. But it's a really good question. I think you probably already read writers who you admire who do a good job with this. I think that oftentimes it just washes over us if we're not attentive to it. So what I'd also suggest is when you read the favorite authors you already have, you maybe think about, okay, how much of this language is abstract versus concrete? Like, one of the things I've noticed is that some writers use a lot more abstract language and some writers use a lot more concrete language. And sometimes they bring the two together in specific ways. And once you start noticing that, it's easier to emulate that yourself. So it's, in a way, it's a way of training your brain as a reader to read like a writer, so that you're not just enjoying the experience of reading description, you're also thinking about how it's being done such that you can recreate it or emulate it yourself. I hope that makes sense. Carson McCullers, I mentioned. There's so many other authors though. I have a lot of poet friends who are also really good at this. Catherine Davis, who's at WashU, really brilliant at this. Her memoir has an absolutely fantastic description. Her memoir came out, I think, this past year. I would heartily recommend it. It's called Aurelia. And that's from a WashU fiction writer. I think this is her first memoir. Anyone else? Anyone else? Any other questions? We've got 10 more minutes. If you have any recommendations for Jan Foster, you can also put them in the chat if you like. As far as authors who you think do a really good job describing. I will admit, I also like some old school poets in their descriptions, like Philip Levine describes Detroit really memorably in the poem You Can Have It. I've taught that before. Carl Sandberg with his Chicago poem, that's kind of iconic, describing Chicago in a really memorable way. I didn't bring those in today, also because I feel like they're such canonical works that a lot of you are bound to encounter them anyway. So that's one of the reasons why, aside from the William Carlos Williams, I wanted to introduce a new work today, like the Hannah Sullivan and the Jesmyn Ward, a relatively new contemporary work. Wal Stevens, though, I think as a poet is really good at merging like philosophical implications and existentialism with description. So one of his great poems about place is Idea of Order at Key West. Very strange poem. Preetha has asked, do I have a regular inspiration practice? Oh, Preetha, I wish I did. I don't. I will say that I think more than most writers, I am very peripatetic. I like to move around a lot. I like to walk a lot. I don't like staying inside in an office space all day, which is one of the reasons why I decided not to be an academic in terms of getting a PhD and writing a dissertation, is because I just didn't feel like being inside and working in solitude was something that I'd be particularly good at. So I will say, I often get my inspiration from walking. So I walk to campus, I walk back from campus. I look for any excuse at all to walk, even if it's in a place that isn't considered terribly pleasant. If it's really sunny and hot, sometimes I'll bring an umbrella and use it as a parasol, and I don't care if that looks strange. I like the experience of interacting with the physical world, because I feel like it actually helps me see the possibilities of what I could write about differently. So I feel like my most regular inspiration as a writer would be walking, and not, also I should clarify, walking not with listening to a podcast, walking not while distracted, but just letting the external elements kind of influence me. And even if they aren't directly affecting something I write, a lot of times it just gets me out of my head so that I can write better. So I wish I could tell you I have like a daily meditation practice or a daily reading practice that I have held to or adhered to for many years. I would be lying if I said that. I do not, but I do think I walk pretty much every day, no matter how bad the weather is. And I find that really helps stimulate my mind. So doesn't look like there are any more questions.
It looks like, oh, here we go. Preetha would like to know what has surprised you the most lately and such informed your work.
Informed your work. Okay, this is a great question. Okay, the most recent thing that I wrote was a film review for this movie called Apples. And this movie was about a man in Greece who has lost his memory. And one of the things I was thinking about as I was walking around is the extent to which like certain experiences of walking around a city are dominated by screens or advertisements. Like, for example, in a lot of parts of Missouri, there are billboards everywhere, or certain parts of certain neighborhoods are inundated with a lot of franchises, such that we see like the names for like Chipotle, Qdoba, Walgreens, like basically being inundated with like different types of commercial or retail landscapes. And I was thinking about like how that was missing in the film, and I hadn't even noticed that it was missing from the film when I watched the film, if that makes any sense. When I was watching the film, I didn't actually think about the fact that there were no screens in the film, there were no advertisements in the film, there were no billboards in the film, there were no fast food franchises, nothing like that. But when I was walking around and noticing these things brought attention to the fact that this film didn't have these things. And then that gave me an idea for, oh, wow, this was a choice the director made that is worthy of unpacking. Why didn't the filmmaker include these things? Why are they patently absent? What to make of that? So I hope that's a specific enough example, because I feel like sometimes students think or writers think that there are these epiphany moments where you see something and then you want to describe it. And sometimes that does happen, but sometimes it's also just like in the process of being perspicacious or keenly aware of what's going on around you, you can also stimulate your mind to come up with new observations and ideas. So I hope that is an okay response. Okay, Preetha says yes. Good.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I would like to thank you for joining us this afternoon. This has been great. It's been really inspiring, and I've actually enjoyed being an audience member for this one. So thank you again.
Oh, good. I have not done this before in a webinar, so forgive me for any of the kind of empty time or anything that felt like technologically awkward. This was my first time doing this, but I really enjoyed it. I wish I could see all of your faces, frankly, because I really love seeing students and interacting with them. I'm a very extroverted person. But I hope that maybe I get to see some or all of you in a future class. That would be really wonderful. So thank you so much. And, you know, it is rainy today, but enjoy the fact that it's not so hot. Maybe you'll see St. Louis in a different way, and it can be inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.